This is Monica Sawyer. Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women, where we focus on all aspects of real estate investing, including strategies, mindset, emotional mastery, money smarts, and so much more to ensure your success. If you'd like to learn my personal favorite investing strategy, just go to blissfulinvestor.com. You can also listen to this episode on the Real Estate Investing for Women podcast on iTunes. Now, let's welcome our guest. Today, I am so excited to bring to the show Kris Ward. Kris is the leading authority in building your business by building your team. Kris is the founder of the Win the Hour, Win the Day philosophy. She helps entrepreneurs easily double their income and triple their time off. Yay! After the loss of her husband, Kris returned full-time to her work as a marketing strategist. She was thrilled to see that her business had not only survived her absence, but was thriving. Now, Kris has completely changed the landscape for entrepreneurs by sharing the success practices that allowed her absence. Kris has been interviewed by one of the original sharks from Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington, and ABC's The Secret Millionaire, James Malinchak. She has been featured on award-winning podcasts, radio, and TV shows throughout North America. Hey there, Kris. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
Yay. It's so interesting. When I was reading your bio, the very first thing that came to me is people's feeling of, if I'm gone and the business does great without me, I'm no longer needed. That sort of fear mentality that people have. Right. I hear my husband talk about this all the time, where he's like, if an engineer is gone and everything that they have set in motion continues to go, then they're likely to get laid off, right? So there's this kind of like mentality of, I need to be really active in my business to be relevant.
Right.
And it's not true. As business owners, we stay relevant by being the visionary, and then having the teams underneath us, right? So I'm really excited to talk about that as a time management tool today.
Awesome.
Yay. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Like, how did you get to where you are now?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a marketing strategist, and I was pulled away from my business when my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so what happened was, really quickly that started to gobble up our calendar like nobody's business. It's insane, like chemo appointments and all this other stuff, surgeries, specialists, everything like that. And really quickly, that just kind of became the new normal. And one thing led to another. And all of a sudden, there I am, and 2 years have passed. And after his passing, I come back to work and I'm like, oh my gosh, it became public for the first time. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what was happening. My clients were completely not aware. So they started to ask me with a real gentle approach under the capacity of time management, productivity, and team building. How did I manage that? Because they were not even aware of my absence. And, I had a renewed commitment to the fragility of life, and that business should be fun, and that it should support your life and not consume it, whatever your business, whether it's your side hustle or this or that, that it should be something that enhances your life, not drains your life. So I started working with people because I love helping people. And I wanted to create a movement where, you weren't always doing things you hated, or you're hiding in the closet like an addict answering emails because, you're zoning out when you're with your family. And that started from, me having a lot of success offline group coaching. And then we took it online, and I wrote a book. And now actually we're about to launch our first product, the Outsourcing Playbook for busy entrepreneurs. And so that's really how it evolved, is just helping other people so that, you could enjoy life.
That is so good. I just have to make a confession. Like, through this whole coronavirus thing, one of the things that I really realized is that most of what I was doing day to day was not filling me up and not giving me bliss, which made me feel like, wow, I'm not really being authentic to my superpower, which is being blissful, but also my message. Like, I have to walk the talk, and I've walked the talk for so long, and I don't know where I lost sight of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But fortunately I caught it. Like, I don't think I've been in that place for very long. I caught it. But this particular topic is the topic that has been really heavy on my mind for the last 3 weeks, specifically on, okay, there's still a lot that I want to accomplish. There's still a message that's so important. I still want to do my podcast. I still want to do all of these things, but I can't have it eating up my life the way that it has for the last year.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm so delighted that there are other people that are out there having this conversation, because you know what? It's not really, or it hasn't been. I think for the millennials, it is a really cool topic. But I think for people in my generation, the opposite topic is what's really chic, right? Like how much do you work? How many hours do you put in? All of those things are the things that make you seem powerful, as opposed to how am I creating a lifestyle around my business? How is my business supporting that lifestyle in a way that brings me bliss, so I don't have to put in as many hours? And the priority is to play and feel blissful. You know what I mean?
I do. And you bring up a lot of really good points. And it happens so gradually. You start with this mission in mind and you're going to do this thing, whatever your thing is, and you get all excited and passionate about it. And then all of a sudden, well, that thing you do requires a little bit of pre-work and post-work. And all of a sudden it starts gobbling up your calendar. And it's really like, I don't know, sitting in a bathtub, all of a sudden you're like, oh, when did this water get cold? Right? It just
Yes.
happens so gradually. And, so here's an example, and this is a story that happened to me many years ago, and this is how my team started. Because what I learned was the turning point for me was I realized you could change your life by simply starting your team. So I remember about 8-9 years ago, which seems really long ago now, technology wise, and I was still going to physical appointments. I would go to somebody's office, we would sit down, we would plan their marketing, and I would give them different ideas and packages. And I would be writing these notes, on my lap or in my iPad, but still, like, they were temporary notes. And I would promise myself, hand to God, that when I got back to the office, I would put them right in my computer. Well, that never happened. And so what I started to see was a pattern where on Friday afternoons now I had the stress of the whole week and oh my gosh, things got distracted. So now I have to put in a bunch of notes from meetings I had during the week.
Mm.
Now, what happened with that is these notes were written with the idea that they were temporary, like 20 minutes, I get back to the office, I'll put the notes in. So I found myself when people called the next week to ask, okay, let's do this. Oh, I promised them a package or I made them a special offer. And I could barely make out my notes because they were supposed to be something that lasted 20 minutes. So my fear was, as I panicked, what if I gave them the wrong price or missed one thing of my promise? They would think I was trying to swindle them, not that I just had bad notes. So my first outsourcer, and I'll tell you, when I started working with building a team and outsourcing, it was still the mindset that you were dealing with somebody on the other side of the world who is driving a chicken to work. Like this seemed like crazy, right? And now it's a little bit more mainstream and people just don't understand how to leverage it. But so my first outsourcer was a transcriptionist. So what happened was I would sit in my car after the meeting. I would talk 30 seconds with great clarity and being really specific. She would put it in the file. It was there within 24 hours. I got all of Friday afternoon back. I stopped beating myself up all week. And because this is what she did and this was her passion, she was really fast at it. And she only, she had like 10 clients, but some weeks I needed her an hour, some weeks I needed none. But the first week she saved me and got me all of Friday afternoon back, I spent $12. So when you say building a team, you often get confused with an employee mindset, like bringing somebody on and managing them and the cost and the upfront work. And that's really what I want people to understand. No matter what you're doing, if this is your side hustle or you're doing real estate on the side or you have a full-time job, there's still admin. I've worked with people who were gainfully employed and I helped them outsource some of their work so that they could still work less hours, because the way they were working sometimes from home or whatever is that they were still producing as long as they're producing. So all of a sudden, if you just get, Friday afternoon off or, well, on average, the clients we work with the first month get 25 hours back a week. But even if you had a full-time job and you were building a team sort of under your own umbrella, it's separate from the company, you still can get like 8 hours back a week. And it's just, then you're right, allows you to be the creative agent and allows you to move on to the next thing. Because if you're holding on to that job out of fear, that really is a job and you're always going to be limited. If you are stuck there, that limits your financial ability. So you want to be replaceable. You really do.
It's so interesting because a lot of the ladies that are listening to this show, their side hustle is real estate. So they do have a full-time job. They may be moms. Many of them are, right? We've got our relationships and our friends, and we've got so many demands in life. And one
Mhm.
of the things that I've realized, and this is actually something I do really well, is outsourcing housework. So I have
Mhm.
someone that cleans the house. I take my laundry out. So those, even if it's not specifically related to your job, outsourcing a lot of those things that are not the best and highest use of your time is really where you can start that regains your time back. Now, what's so funny about this is that now, as we're in coronavirus and I can't allow my house cleaner in and I don't have someone else doing my laundry, I'm realizing how much time that takes and how much time that saved me by outsourcing it so that I could be a better wife, better friend, better daughter, better business owner, better podcaster, right? Like, I can do so much more because those hours are
Yeah.
not being taken up. And it's really in my face right now, like even those little things that we can outsource. But let's talk more specifically about things that we can outsource in our businesses, in our jobs, and specifically in real estate. Because in real estate, our team is going to consist of our vendors, our tenant, our real estate agent, our mortgage broker, right? Our title company. Those are the people that we think of as our team, right? But there
Mhm.
are other team members that are not so in the limelight, right? That can help us to be more productive, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think what happens with most of the people I work with, so we have like 90-day coaching cycles, and most of the clients I work with, what they don't realize is how much redundancy there is in their work, whether no matter how specific or talented they are or how niche their career is, right? So I would tell you, as somebody that's, doing real estate, of course, social media has to be an aspect of that. You can't, like, you've got to be on there. It's all about networking. It's all about relationships, right? So I would tell you, like, we work with clients where, let's say, for example, you have your time allotted and you're very busy. So you might pop on and do some social media, like a half hour in the morning, half hour at night. But you could have, like, an assistant, someone you outsource that makes sure. The way I do it is that we have this little thing I use, Basecamp or whatever. You could have a Google Docs. And then they could tag everybody that, let's say, I was commenting or something. So when I get messages, what I do is I go at the end of the day and my team puts together any link where somebody's tagged me, messaged me, asked me about my product. So I go in very specifically and hit like 30 contacts instead of scrolling 4 different social media platforms and trying to pick up, oh, I got this message from LinkedIn, I got here, got there. So it's all sort of put together for me and it saves me time. So it saves me a lot of time because then you get seduced into social media and answering this and shining that. And all of a sudden you bought a pair of earrings and you're like, hey, I was up here to network. So
That's so true.
yeah. So there is so many different things that you think, oh, I can't do, right? Or let's take it even on the grounds of right now, we're really promoting our outsourcing playbook for busy entrepreneurs. So when somebody asks me about that, I will respond and type it out. When I do that, all of a sudden I notice that there is like maybe 15 different responses, and I keep copying and pasting my response into a Google Docs. Well, now my team is out there, and if somebody asks a question about it, because I just did a video, they just take one of my responses I already gave, and it starts off with like, that's a great question. Here's what we're working on. And they just copy and paste my language into an answer. So it's exact same thing, only I didn't manually type it out myself. So all of a sudden, again, I'm leveraging my networking, I'm leveraging my social media, I'm doing all these things, but I'm leaning on my team so that I can be somewhere else and not, succumb by the overwhelming necessity of being all day long on social media. So there's so many little things that, especially if real estate is your side hustle, where you can really say, okay, like, time really matters to me. So let's lean into this.
Hmm. Talk to me about how you would find that sort of back end help.
That's a great question. And probably, on my website, www.winthehourwintheday.com, that's probably the number one question I get. And here's what happens. People will look at somebody that I have on my team, or one of my clients will say to me, oh my gosh, everyone's really envious of my team. And they get thinking that it's this magical place, this magical well we pulled them from, or that I got this one lucky person everybody needs a Ruby. Oh my gosh, Ruby's great. Everyone needs a Ruby. And then people will say to me, well, can I borrow her? And I'd say, well, that's like saying, here's my sister. We're really close. We get along well. Would you like to have the same relationship with her? But we have a process. There's been a history there. She's been trained, all that stuff. And you can have it too. It's really simple. So what I would tell you is there's different platforms depending what you need. And there's different platforms have different strengths and weaknesses. So a more commonly known one is Odesk, but they take 10% off everything that you pay that person forever. So if it's somebody that's going to be like a virtual assistant, it may not be something you want. Filipino Online is really great where you pay monthly and you can just cancel after you get your VA for that month and they're happy with it, no problem. And then you're done with that relationship, you pay them anyway. So there's different platforms for different specific needs. So it's kind of like, can I get pants at Walmart? Yes, but you don't want to wear them to a wedding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bigger question. It's a great question, but it's a bigger question. But what I think is really important in the question is understanding that it's a process and it's a talent. And because people will say to me, oh my gosh, Kris, I listened to you. I heard you. I thought you were right. I went off and I hired somebody that didn't work out. Kids these days, the economy. And I'd say, well, that's like my accountant saying to me, Kris, what you need is a new tax strategy. And then I come back 3 months later and say, that didn't work at all. Well, what do I know about that, right? So people get confused and think that because you have a business, you just run out and hire somebody. That's not like hiring a part-timer at a grocery store. So you really want to understand that you don't have the skill set, experience, or training in that area. And you're going to pay dearly on experimenting on yourself. And that's why I created the outsourcing playbook for busy entrepreneurs. So no, you need to have a strategy.
So what is the biggest mistake that someone makes when trying to build the team?
That is an excellent question. I think the biggest mistake that people make is they get one person to do one job and they get really excited about how that's working out. So let's say you hire a virtual assistant, or let's go back to the social media person since we gave that example. You say, oh my gosh, I got this social media person. I heard this amazing podcast. Kris gave some tips. They were awesome. And she's right. I saved a whole bunch of time, copy and pasting answers. She tagged all my responses so I could just go in a half-hour a day and respond to people. It was great. But then next week they start going, well, that worked out really well. That saved me so much time. I'm so happy. You know what I'm going to get her to do? I'm going to get her to write some copy. I'm going to get her to do some graphics. You know what would be really good if we have a quote every week. So all of a sudden they start stretching that job because they've had success and they start being unclear as to what that person's responsibilities are. So too easy, the VA person becomes a social media person. The social media, because they're on social media, starts becoming the graphic designer because people think, no, I asked you to grab messages. Now I think you did that well, so I'll start getting you to do some graphics. And so it starts bleeding into other areas, which frankly is what's wrong with traditional employment. When you are hiring somebody part-time and you think, I really only need them 2 hours a week, but who's going to come in for 2 hours a week? So I have to hire them for 12, but then I have to fill the other hours with work. And then that creates more work. And then you have to get a desk and a computer. So that's the beauty of outsourcing is like with the idea of the transcriptionist, some weeks I needed her for an hour, some weeks I needed her for none, but she was zoned in on that and she was amazing at it. And so that worked. So don't start stretching the responsibilities because someone really impressed you in one area.
Mm. So one of the things that I've had an experience with is that I might have 5 different people that specialize in something on one particular project. So let's take, for instance, my podcast, right? I record it, it goes up onto a Google Drive. There are 5 people that touch that podcast before it actually gets to my listeners' ears. There's a person that does the editing, then there's the person that gets it loaded up into Lisbon and writes the little thing, and then they also produce the newsletter, and then someone else who does the video portion, and then someone else that loads all the video to all the different platforms. So there's, and even before that, you know this, you filled out a form so that everything goes into a spreadsheet so that my guy that writes my notes can get all the spreadsheets, get everything off of there, and it just goes up, and it's kind of like magic. But I will say that because there's so many people touching it, because those are their specialties, I feel like I'm still constantly managing. Like it seems like it's flow, but there's all these portions. And if one portion doesn't work, so that means that what I'm doing is checking everybody's work along the way. And these people have worked for me for 2 years. Still, like today, there was a problem with one of the videos because it wasn't sized right and she didn't notice it, right? So I feel like I've got a beautifully flowing process, but I'm still managing all of those pieces, which is what I wanted to avoid in the first place. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that question. And I wish this was show and tell because I could show you my process really quickly. And what happens is this. That is the fear of most people. And you get these different people, but you're still the gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say in my process for my video, my podcast, Win the Hour, Win the Day. What happens is there might be 40 steps to that. And they go through all the departments you do. I've not reinvented the wheel. It's the same thing, right? Somebody's got to edit it and do all these different stuff. So what happens is the first thing will be, okay, this has been recorded. And then I flag my VA. And then there's all these steps. Her job is to push them through all those steps, saying, okay, so I've got this, I got that. And then she alerts the graphic guy. And then so there is a separate person other than me that approves it going through, make sure it keeps moving through the machine like a widget. Then another thing is we have somebody what we call audits it. So you're saying, oh, they didn't catch that. Well, when we put it up on Simplecast, which for those of you, that's just a platform we all use for podcasts, then somebody has to listen to that podcast, because how do we know until a listener tells us that nothing aired or got cut off halfway? So what I would tell you is it's really about the process you have. You have some cracks in your process that can be eliminated. And those are the people that kind of like there's two groups of people I work with. They don't understand they can outsource at all. And then they have done it with some success, but there's cracks in there which are causing them as much work as before. They think, I've come so far. I've made such gain. I'm doing all these great things, yet I'm still being sucked back in. Like those movies, they pull you back in one more time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're being pulled in. So what's happening is you're playing a little bit of game of ping pong. You're pinging into somebody else, they're ponging it back to you, then you have to ping it to somebody else.
Right.
So even recently, we often hire and teach our clients how to hire. So right now is we've got a whole bunch of applications coming in for one of my clients for a virtual assistant. So my assistant goes in and pre-qualifies and narrows down that list for me. So if I get 200 applicants, these are the things we're looking for. And then we go from 200 down to 45, right? So you can have somebody that nurtures your process and fills in those cracks. So you're almost there, but it's kind of like, think about making a batch of chocolate chip cookies. One little step where you don't put the chocolate chips in until after the cookies are baked ruins the whole recipe. So you're like, I followed all the steps. It tastes like sugar. It's kind of sweet. The chocolate chips melt when I put them on the hot cookie. It's just not the same as what I thought it would be. So that's what's happening there. You were so close, but your process has some holes in it. And that's why people get sucked into thinking, oh, it's too much time to manage it and all this stuff. So after I record my show, I spend about 12 minutes on it, and then I never see or hear it again. But the process takes care of checking on itself and proofing it and auditing it and all those things that go into that.
Oh, that sounds like magic.
It's not magic.
Yeah.
That's the best part. It's not magic. That's the movement I want to create. This is not magic. It's so simple. It's not magic.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is it feels magical, right? Like to have all of that taken off of my shoulders. Not that I don't love everything. Yeah. I mean, I really do love this podcast and I love everything about it. But there is a reality about there's only 24 hours in the day, you know?
But let me jump in, and if I can be so rude, you love the podcast because you're great at it and you are an on-air personality and this is what you do best. So I hear you. Of course you love the podcast. Your listeners can tell how vibrant you are, how engaged you are, how much you enjoy interviewing people. That does not mean you love doing all the heavy admin work. Mm-hmm. You don't have to apologize for loving your podcast. You do. But all the post-production work, you know, just like somebody who's an actress, a movie star, we all have seen TV, doesn't mean they want to be in the editing room.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. That's not my true skill. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So when do you think is a good time to start looking for a team? So for me, it actually took, before I really got into it, it took about a year to get to really buy into. I needed all of those processes handled because it was not the best use of my time, right? So Wendy, and that's just my podcasting business. Different businesses are going to have different time frames, right?
Yeah.
But or we perceive that,
Yeah. Yes.
which is where I was headed. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that.
Listen, anything done well in the history of mankind on any level had a team, and especially any aspect of business. People have this false idea, and I had it too. Once I get to a certain plateau, a certain financial plateau, a certain amount of clients, when I've been in business 2 years, then I'll build a team. And when I get a certain revenue, and I mean, like I said, you think, oh my gosh, I can't afford it. I have no time to manage a team and I have no money, right? But that example I gave with the $12, like that's a coffee really at one of those swanky places. So for $12, I got all of Friday afternoon back to myself and the stress of the whole week. And all I had to do was mess up one client and say, oh, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong price. Now I lost that opportunity. So it certainly was worth the $12. So what I would tell you is, like the old saying goes, the best time was day one, the second best time is today. But you really, what if you want to keep up with your competition, with all the things that are happening online, if you want your business to survive, if you want to get to that next thing that's going to bring you financial opportunities, frankly, if you want to stay in business, if you're tired of looking around and saying, how's that person getting that? And they got a book out and a podcast out and they're doing all these things. It's because they have a team. A team is the backbone to any success story in the history of business.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk a little bit more about how that would relate to real estate specifically.
Yeah.
So the ladies that are listening are some of them are agents, actually many of them are agents, but their real intention is to be investors. And so when we talk about my listeners, they're all investors. So this is kind of their side hustle. They're not selling real estate. So there's not the processes of lead generation and all of that stuff that you would normally think of with an agent.
Yeah.
There is lead generation, for instance, with finding tenants
Yeah.
or for finding vendors or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
There's interview processes to find your agent. You have to go through that whole process till you find the right person. But talk a little bit about what back-end processes might work for someone who's got this side hustle that they're trying to make successful while they're working full time.
Well, just so much, everything comes down to admin work, right? And so when I gave the example of social media earlier and having my messages tagged, so maybe they're not lead generations for you, but they might be somebody that's got, hey, listen, I just saw this property. I think it's a good deal for you. It's still a business of networking and relationships. And I
Mm-hmm.
still don't know any business in this day and age, especially now after this whole pandemic thing. There's going to be a huge shift where businesses are going to have to be much stronger online. Everything's going to have the security and the backbone of running as efficiently online, even if it's something that wouldn't traditionally do that. Like, let's say you're a massage therapist or something like that. So there's always a heavy amount of admin to anything it's doing, whether it's chasing emails or people, or whether it's sending paperwork to those vendors. There is a significant amount of copy and paste. We don't realize how much we do that in a day, and having to move things from pile A to pile B, right? So what I would tell you is, when I'm working with people like that, we first sit down and we do a little audit and we take a look and we're like, oh my gosh, especially when they've got a full-time job and then the investment is their side hustle, whatever their processes are, whether when they take on a new vendor, they send them these pieces of paperwork, having somebody else do that. Oh, but that only takes 5 minutes. Okay, well, times that times the other 20 things you did today, then we just saved you 2 hours, right?
Well, and not only that, but every time you shift from a 5 minute to a 5 minute to a 5 minute, you lose
Yes,
time.
you
Like that
do.
just took 5 minutes. And now I have to think about what's that next project, pull everything up, do and like get
Yeah.
into that. So any 5 minute project, I would say any 5 minute project from my own experience takes at least 20 minutes.
You are so right. In fact, in my book, When the Hour, When the Day, we talk about whenever you switch modalities, even like being interrupted, they say it takes you about 22 minutes. We've done studies, they've done studies, it's in the book, about 22 minutes to get your brain power back to the same intensity or focus that you had before the interruption.
Mm-hmm.
And, even like me, I think, oh, I work so much faster and harder. That doesn't apply to me. So let's say you're superhuman and they're wrong. Let's cut that in half and say it's 12 minutes. So now you're right. The 5 minutes plus the 12 minutes to take you back to get there, it really is just like your cell phone where all the apps are open and starts burning down your battery quicker. So
That's
you
right.
are so right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's nice to have someone that is just churning and doing that thing, right? Because even if they're switching clients, they're doing the same process. So they don't have to get back
Yeah.
into the mindset. They have to
Yeah.
find the new client, but they're
Right.
still in flow of that thing that they're doing, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially real estate and relationships like that, because it's so paper heavy. It's so admin heavy,
Hmm.
even sending stuff out to just there's so it's just full of a lot of paperwork, right? I mean, I'll be honest, right before I got on this call, I had a situation, one of my rental properties is like, oh my gosh, there's an issue with the plumbing, right? But we have a process really quickly. I'm like, okay, I got 15 minutes to deal with this because it was out of nowhere. I gotta I need to respect your time. But we had a process in place, and this is what happens. Even we have a process for emergencies. So, and somebody's taking care of that right now, because here's the steps, because it's
Hmm.
not going to be the first nor the last time, right?
And that's actually the key to blissful investing, ladies. I
Yeah,
really want you to hear this, is that the way that I only spend 5 to 10 hours a month building a multi-million-dollar business is because I've got the processes and the team to
yeah,
kind of handle that, right? For
yeah,
me, I've trained my renters to be the team, but not
yeah,
everybody can do that. I deal with executive homes. Not everybody's doing that, right? So you have to have a team. And for me, it's my renters, but it's the process that creates the bliss. It creates the freedom and the time so that you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. Because here's the other thing, that plumbing problem happened today for you. Unless you've got 100 doors, that same plumbing problem or a similar plumbing problem is probably not going to show up for another year. So
yeah.
then you have to recreate the process and try to remember what you did and who was your contact and
Yes,
who was it that you liked and all of
yes,
that stuff. But if you've
yes.
got a process, now you can just say, oh, here's my plumbing issue thing. This is the guy that I call. This is how this is what I tell him. This is what I ask my tenant to do. And it's just done. And it's done in 15 minutes rather than the recreation and trying to remember that, which can take 2 hours, you
You
know?
know, that is so true. I'll tell you a quick and funny story. Many years ago, when I was doing trade shows for my business, I had a process even then. Okay, here, I need this, I need this, I need that, right? And I was going to a trade show for the first time that was really super close to my home, like, whatever, 15 minutes away from home. Usually it was like an hour or so. And I looked at the list and I was like, I was looking at my computer and I was like, I don't need the keyboard because I'm not going to be dueling. There's no Wi-Fi. I just need the computer screen for display to rotate these visuals and stuff. So just before the doors open, I turn and the password comes up on my screen, and they need a 4-digit password for my computer to work. But I left the keyboard at the office because I thought I didn't need it. I violated my process. Now I'm here to tell you, no matter how loudly you scream at a computer, it will not absorb the password, right? So, so the point is, what happened was I hadn't done a trade show in a year. Even though I had the process, I was tired. It was down the street. I took some shortcuts. So I knew better that whenever I step outside the process, it's like, listen, you're going to get burned. But some people don't have that process at all. And then they're always, you're right, every year they're doing something and they haven't done 6 months or 3 months. And so you're wasting all that fuel relearning. And where's that phone number? What's that plumber's guy name? And remember, did he have brown hair, or was that the redheaded carpenter? So you are so right. So right.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say um, to expect some sort of getting help would cost?
Oh, that is like the most, you know what? That's the thing, is it's so crazy affordable. Like I explained with the transcriptionist, that was like $12. And here's the sad thing. I don't even know what she does anymore, because there's so many platforms out there that are now like 10 cents a minute. So there's that. We are at a time where it's a magical time to be in business. There, I'll let you use that magical word. It's a magical time to be in business, because with the global economy, we are dealing with economies around the world that, like in the Philippines, it's like, I think $4.75 a day for minimum wage. And so when you pay them $5 an hour, they are thrilled and they are living quite the life. And that's very affordable for you. And what that also lets you do then is give your in-house or people that are local, you can pay them more and you can invest in the company more. And originally there was some concerns like, are we exploiting them or whatever? And I know I had a couple people many years ago talk to me. One was, she was an American from the Philippines. And when I was first introduced to outsourcing like 8, 9 years ago, I was like, that seemed like I was exploiting someone. And she said, like, who are you to tell them what they should spend their money on? She said, because we look at the North American lifestyle of wasteful and ridiculous, and your family's all spread out and they're not in one home. And so there was these misguided understandings in the beginning, but you really globally can do a lot for $1 these days. Like I really kind of call it building a rock star team for pennies. It's just super affordable. So I got all Friday afternoon off and back in my hands for $12. Like that you can stomach. Like if you can't afford to hire someone, then you need to hire someone.
Because it'll free up the time for you to
Yeah.
do the things that are going to make you money.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. I love that. You know what? I feel like, Kris, we could talk forever, but we're already out of time. So let's do a couple of things.
Okay.
First of all, could you tell everybody how they can reach you?
Sure. Anywhere. Tell me you heard me on this amazing show in LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff. I was in Instagram jail. I don't know why, but I'm back on now. So it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, but it's because I'm starting from fresh. Definitely you can check out, we've got some free gifts from Kris, free gift from Kris.com. That's KRIS.com. Your listeners can go in and grab some stuff. It's like a little bit of a treasure box. There's things that we still charge for that are in there. So that's free gift from Kris.com. So those are a few places.
I love that. And are you ready for our 3 rapid fire questions?
I'm always ready.
Okay, good.
I will answer anything but my weight. Other than that, I'm good.
I am so with you, Kris. So let's start by, why don't you tell us a super tip on getting started in real estate investing?
I just think get in on any level that you can, and you will be shockingly surprised that it increases with value. Like I bought properties where I think this cannot, like, oh my gosh, like this is a cute little place in a rural area. I'll be lucky, pay down a bit, it's investment. And then all of a sudden you come back and 5 years later, it's this crazy amount of money for this little house. And then even then you think, well, it can't go up anymore. So we know real estate keeps going up in an insane amount. So just get in on any level you can, and it will grow.
I love that. Thank you. And then what is one strategy on being successful in real estate investing?
I think take care and maintain the property. Don't take shortcuts because it just starts to unravel really quickly. So there is no, oh, it's just the garage door. Oh, it's just that. It just tatters really quickly. So just treat it with respect and put quality into it when there's adjustments or repairs that need to be made.
Great. And then what is one daily practice you would say contributes to your personal success?
I think taking care of yourself first and putting work inside that. And you are like, health is, as we mentioned at the top of the hour with my husband, if you don't have your health, you have absolutely 100% of nothing. So vitality is everything. So I exercise, I stop for a proper lunch. I learned how to chew my food slower. Just make sure that there is non-negotiables as far as self-care goes, and put the work inside that, because there will always, always be more work.
So good. So good. So, Kris, I'm really excited about talking about what we're going to do in Extra. So Kris has offered to talk to us about calendaring. So most of us use our calendar as what are our appointments and what's our to-dos for today. Yeah. And she has a technique that we can use our calendar as the blueprint for success rather than just this paper tool that we scribble things on. So, or electronic tool, whatever, right? Yeah. So I'm really excited for her to talk to us about how to increase our productivity in that way. So we'll be doing that in Extra. But Kris, thank you so much for what you've offered in this portion of this show. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me. Nothing more valuable someone can give you than their time. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And ladies, thank you so much for joining Kris and I for this portion of the show. If you are subscribed to Extra, please stay tuned. We've got some amazing stuff still coming. If you're not subscribed but would like to be, just go to realestateinvestingforwomen.extra.com. So realestateinvestingforwomen.extra.com. And what you do is you sign up, you get 7 days for free so you can check out all the extra content, and then subscribe if you like. But in the meantime, you get a lot of really good content. So go check that out, realestateinvestingforwomen.extra.com. If you're leaving us now, thank you so much for joining Kris and I for this portion of the show. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to download my favorite investing strategy, just go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.